Bon dia, Maluk Sira. Good morning, brothers and sisters, students, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be able to participate today in the Guji Festival. I apologise that I can't be there. I'm currently in Paris on holidays. If you can see by the decor of my room here, which looks like the set of the Moulin Rouge, it's because I'm staying just around the corner from the Moulin Rouge. Richard has asked me to start with a short story to give some context. So I'll take you back to the 11th of February in 2008. I was 29 years of age. I had joined the army directly from school. I went to school at Marist College Ashgrove in Brisbane. So I'd been in the army about 10 or 11 years, and I was in the position as National Defence Advisor to the head of state, the President of Timor-Leste, who at the time was Jose Ramos Horta, a Nobel Peace Laureate. And I'd been with him for about 4 or 5 months. We've been working hard trying to negotiate the final chapters of a crisis, which was very similar to a civil war that had started in 2006. It included a group of rebels that was still in the mountains that were actively engaging in dialogue for peace. So it was about 7 a.m. on the Monday morning. I'd been travelling for days. I was exhausted, and I get a phone call. My phone was ringing in the side of my bed, and I'm in Dili, the capital of Timor-Leste, which is so very unusual for anyone to be calling on a Monday morning in Timor-Leste. I pick up the phone, and then it immediately cuts out. I looked at the phone, and it was one of the senior advisors in the President's office. So I started messaging him back, just in case the phone lines were down. By the time I was messaging him, he called me back and started screaming at me, Michael, the President's been shot. The President's been shot. Make sure you get the ambulance, the military, helicopters here as soon as possible. And then he hung up. Within minutes, I had leapt out of my bed. I had everything ready to go. Going through my mind was basically a scenario that I'd played out many times, where later in the day, regardless of what was about to happen, I would end up in the mountains, in the jungle, standing between Timorese rebels and Australian soldiers, trying to stop bloodshed. With the butterflies in the stomach of this is going to be another dangerous day. I couldn't really fathom what had happened to the President because it was such an unlikely scenario. I put everything on, jumped in my car, had all my military kit ready to go in the car. I was just wearing jeans and a black t-shirt like this. I had dog tags over the outside. I'd been travelling for 5 days, so I hadn't shaven. I had messy hair. But I screamed directly to the military compound at the heliport in Dili. And there we had a combat medical facility. At the same time, I was getting phone calls from Paulo, this guy that was ended up being with the President in this minivan that was like an ambulance without medical supplies. And they were screaming towards us. And I was very colourful in my language, but directed him to come to this Australian military hospital. Everybody else was wanting to go to the Dili National Hospital. And if he had have gone there, they didn't have necessary blood supplies or the combat medical staff to treat, the ICU staff to treat him, and he would have died. In a very fortunate butterfly effect moment, he convinced the vehicles to keep going forward, and a few minutes later I met them at the heliport, which was quite a colourful scene. I screamed into the ICU, told everybody they needed to get ready, screamed out to the gate, met the Timorese drivers and worked them through the Australian compound. To the ER. The President was not just another president or leader. I'd been working with him for years. I knew him very well. I'd been in his pocket for the last 4.5 months, and I considered him family. When I looked over my shoulder to the back of the vehicle, I saw the whole bottom of the vehicle covered in blood, and then I got out. I could hear him just slightly breathing. I pulled open the door to the ambulance. Blood was spilling out. Blood was congealing on the bottom. He was ghost white. I jumped up, and as the people were scrambling to get the gurney ready, I put my hands on his shoulders and said, "Sir, you're in good hands. We'll take care of you now." He doesn't remember any of this because his brain was completely wiped of oxygen and blood. We ended up taking him in and carrying him onto the emergency table. The next few days were very intense. Firstly, to evacuate the president, to stabilise him, which took 6.5 hours in surgery, to evacuate him to Darwin, and then to take care of the next interim president and then the interim president after that. And then there were all these rebels in the mountain. It was the perfect ingredients for a much bigger crisis to begin. Needless to say, that was a pretty stressful time, and I ended up working for the president for another 3.5 years. So you can imagine the burden or stress, responsibility of every time I phone called, what degree of emergency could it be? And I'd been in a lot of emergencies throughout 2006 with people calling me, civilians, families, members of parliament, military police, gang leaders, calling me to help them all hours of the day and night, and knowing that if I had said the wrong thing or not acted in the right way, that the consequences were life and death. So that just gives a little bit of context to part of my story. I'll go back to sitting where you are now, in a big lecture room or an auditorium. I remember being in Morris Ashgrove, 16, 17, watching similar speeches and people who'd been living interesting lives and pondering, what should I do in life? To be honest, I had no idea what I wanted to do. My father was in the army, and I'd done Cubs and Scouts and Army Cadets, so it seemed to be a pathway that I could go into. But the idea of, I was very light, I was only about 55 kilos, closer to 50 kilos even in year 12. So the idea of carrying heavy packs and going into combat didn't make sense. I wanted to be in hospitality. I really loved nature. And the backstop for me, I did get a scholarship to the Australian Defence Force Academy, so that was my plan A. But my backstop was to study psychology, and I didn't even know if I wanted to do that. I just thought, just get into a degree and you can change halfway. But I did take the pathway of the army with some encouragement. And I did 3 years at the Defence Force Academy, a year at Duntroon. Once again, against my natural instinct, which was to stay well clear of doing infantry work, which was really hard and difficult, brutal. I didn't feel like I was physically up to it. That's the pathway I chose, and I competed for the hardest battalions in the infantry and got it. And in 99, after the 4 years of training, I graduated from Duntroon in Canberra, and I deployed for the first time to this country called East Timor. I had no idea where East Timor is. I'm sure most of you don't know where East Timor is, but I knew it was somewhere north of Australia, and I was thinking more like Sulawesi area or Ambon. Not that I really knew where they were either, but even after my first deployment, which was in 99, your focus was really on the areas that you were operating in. And my first mission was within a week of graduation in December 99. I had a platoon, which is about 30 plus men. Well, it was 40 because I also had 4 armoured personnel carriers attached to me, and I was a platoon commander of all of them. We were spread out over about 30 kilometres with 3 different security locations on the border in one of the major areas of activity in this warlike scenario that was there at the time. So it was a baptism of fire, and the only words I really knew at the time were stop or I'll shoot, or put your hands up. Anyway, we were taught a few phrases in Indonesian, in Bahasa Indonesia, and receiving intelligence every day that attacks were going to happen. And there was certainly plenty of dangerous things happening, and internal struggle and major humanitarian issues. So one thing that really struck me, though, going to this country called East Timor, which is now called Timor-Leste, was despite the incredible hardship they'd been going through, 24 years of occupation, but the last year and a half as they were leading up to independence, they'd been massively persecuted. Lots of people had been targeted, tortured, murdered, harassed, and every single person, had to flee their homes and basically live in the most undignified conditions of starvation and fear. But even a couple of months in, even as soon as Australian forces landed in Timor, the Timorese embraced us with the most warm hands and hospitality. We'd go into any village and an elder would immediately offer us the limited coffee they have. They'd find some fruit or anything that they could give us. And this was also a similar story that comes from our forefathers that served in Timor in 1942. I did 2 security missions there. One was in 2001, one was in 2002. So one was in 99, one was in 2001, 2002. And then I went back to work with the Timorese guerrilla fighters in 2004 as a training team commander. And that continued on until the start of 2007. And I got enveloped in an operational role through the 2006 crisis. The 2006 crisis for me was a massive challenge. I was the Australian soldier and an officer who spoke the language and had the widest connections in the community. I was liaison for the military, for the police, for the rebel military and police, for all the political leaders, and I made contacts with all of the youth leaders, many who you consider warlords or gangsters, many who were just desperate to defend themselves in this state of anarchy. So, as I mentioned, my day-to-day life was very stressful and dangerous, and had quite an impact on me. When I came home, I came home in 2007 for a bit, and I didn't want to be at home. I wanted to go back into the action. I felt more comfortable in a high adrenaline environment than I did being back in Brisbane. And fortunately, I went back to work for the president, Ramos Horta. So how did that affect me? By the time 2012 came along and my mission with Ramos Horta had finished, I'd have to say I was a complete emotional wreck. I'd been through a number of major emotional breakdowns. I was still working and still functional in a way, but I was very, very unhealthy. I had periods of serious manic depression, not being able to understand and digest all of the trauma that I'd witnessed and been through. Sometimes I think I was undiagnosed. I wasn't getting treatment because I didn't want to be taken out of off the line or out of work. So I didn't get any treatment at the time, but I had periods of psychosis, and I definitely became dependent on alcohol in the evening so that I could get to sleep, coffee, and medication to try to stay functional. And when I came home, I had a complete collapse. I had no idea who I was. I did start seeing a psychiatrist, but I lost my identity. I lost my will to live. I had lived a very high-risk lifestyle. I eventually went on to medication, and instead of being a super happy, ambitious, joyful person out there for adventure, I became very isolated and miserable and lacked self-confidence. And it was a really tough time for a number of years. I did some Army Reserve work, which I was doing but really struggling with. I'd have nightmares every night for at least a decade. And in the end, I realized I need help. So I reached out for help, or others pushed me towards help. And in doing that, I also started being active with veterans and helping other veterans. And I started a program called Timor Awakening, which we've been doing for 7 years now. And through that, I've learned a lot. One major revelation that I've had in this time has been how the government and Australia has acted in the background. So whilst I was going through this major identity crisis and major depression, I was starting to hear stories about the Timor Gas Treaty and spying on the Timorese during negotiations in 2004, which was a major deal for the Timorese, for the future of the Timorese, who have been and are continued to be in major humanitarian crisis. 40% are still living below the poverty line. It's a country that's only an hour from Darwin, and of course I'd heard about the Balibo Five, but I didn't really know too much about it. Some books came out about it. A really good book is called Crossing the Line, which has all of the cables and communication between Australian diplomats and governments from Jakarta and Canberra, Washington and Portugal. It really tells the story about how our leadership were more interested in money and oil and gas and other things rather than the lives of human beings. Hundreds of thousands of Timorese died from 75 to 99, and this is a country, and I also got to know a lot of veterans who served in World War II and their families in Timor, who to their last breath owed their lives to the Timorese, who helped them survive for over a year. These are tall, white, skinny men in Asia trying to evade tens of thousands of Japanese. The only reason they were able to do that was because the Timorese became their eyes and ears, carried their gear, helped them in and out of ambushes, went into combat with them, and upwards of 60 to 70,000 Timorese died in that conflict. And only 44 Australians died in that conflict. About 30,000 Australians died in the whole of World War II. So twice that many died in Timor, and many of those were because they supported us. So here was a wartime ally who, with under international law, had the right for a pathway to independence. Australia was signatories to all of the post-World War II treaties that should have pursued a peaceful pathway for independence for the Timorese, and they didn't. And a lot of that was financially motivated. And then to learn about the spying in 2004, where I was serving in Timor at the time and had no idea about. I'd heard about people saying that the negotiations were unfair. At the time, I didn't believe it because I thought that everything we do is always right and just and moral. So during this period of identity crisis, I was having another wave of identity crisis of, wow, have I been fighting all my life for the good guys, or are we the bad guys in this situation? And at first I was angry. The Timorese asked me all the time, how do you feel about this? And I say, well, I was angry and embarrassed. I felt betrayed. But in the end, after digesting that, I feel more empowered to understanding the realities of diplomacy and what certain people will be doing, or their perceptions of what national interests are, and realizing the only way to change that is to be informed and to be an alternate voice, or to lead people towards pathways that are more just and in line with the values of our society. So that's what I've been doing in Timor. The Timorese asked me to support, and the veteran community to support their campaign to seek justice in the Timor Sea, which we did very proudly. We marched with them in Timor. We made many statements and wrote letters to the government. And then also for justice for the Witness K and Bernard Collaery cases, which seem to be majorly unjust, unwarranted, and unethical, and that seems to have taken a positive turn just recently. My experiences in Timor by far have been positive by learning as a student in what resilience really is, and how people can, through faith and compassion, empathy and hope, can overcome the most incredible obstacles, the most difficult challenges, and that's inspired me to get through my challenges. And for 7 years, we've been taking veterans there who've been learning that lesson, the lesson of forgiveness, the power of forgiveness and reconciliation, and how you can look at it from a spiritual and a community perspective. But another way to look at it is the most practical way to move forward and to live your life to the full. We don't want to have lives lacking love. We want lives full of love, and we can't have that with resentment or vengeance. My time is up. I'm already over time, but that's natural for me. My last point I'd like to say, and it's something that we discuss right at the start of every program that we have for veterans who are suffering from post-traumatic stress or mental illness, is that life is difficult. Life is full of challenges. Life is full of tragedies, and tragedies that'll often come and hit us when we least expect it. Life is full of suffering. All of us have periods of time when we're up and periods of time when we're down. We have periods of time when we're feeling confident, in flow, and we have periods where we feel miserable and useless and lacking self-esteem and not wanting to reach out, touch, even embrace the people that we love. Life can also have triumph and joy as well. But I think one aspect to come out of that is that we will all suffer at some point, and how we prepare ourselves is what's really important. How we live ourselves, but also how we surround ourselves by positive people, whether that be in business, but also for your own soul and mental wellness. And I consider us a tribe. Everybody sitting in the room now is a tribe. We all have strengths. We all have weaknesses. We all have things that we will excel at. We all have passions. We all have our own insecurities or our imperfections, whether that be spiritual, mental, physical. But all of those imperfections, those differences, they're the things that make up a tribe. A tribe isn't made of 20 warriors or 20 caregivers that can raise children. A tribe, going back to our most primal roots, a tribe is made up of people that can fulfill all those things, that can support each other, that doesn't need to say please or thank you, that always just is there to do what they can with their skills to support each other. And when you're down, other people in the tribe can help lift you up or support you. And I think that's a really good way to live by, that the Timorese do to this day. And it's a way to live a life that's full, and hopefully a life that's happy and pursuing the things that you are good at and passionate about. Finally, the three main themes for the festival: recognise, inspired, and lead. For me, I've always wanted to recognise opportunities, not risks, but opportunities. We can manage risk, but every opportunity in life, take it, grab on it, especially if it's something you're passionate about. Always volunteer for things. Recognise injustice, recognise what you can do and what you can't do, and focus on what you can do. Inspire. Let's inspire others to be leaders of change through compassion and empathy, by lifting people up and by uniting people rather than dividing people. We cannot be compassionate unless we understand how other people are living, whether it be the person we're passing in the street, somebody that may be getting upset at the shops, someone at work, or someone in need. Living lives of compassion will enrich our lives and give us the meaningful social connection that we really, really need in life. And to lead, we don't all want to lead, and there's not always the time for us to lead, but we do need leaders. We need leaders to give us hope. We need leaders that can be decisive and take action, create change through real action. All it takes is just a little bit of action, and then a little bit more and a little bit more. You can't just talk about something. You need to do something and do more before you can actually convince other people to do the same. And if you're not willing to put yourself in risk, if you're not willing to be on the ground, get dirty, work hard, give up weekends, to do something that you're passionate about, then you can't expect others to do the same. But it's an incredible opportunity and pleasure to be in that position. And we are all very blessed in Australia to have wonderful educations and the most amazing grounding to be leaders, the leaders in our community, to be leaders of change, and also in the world. That's all I've got to say. I'm now well over time. It's been a pleasure to speak to you. My final recommendation would be to travel as much as you possibly can in life. I've taken every little window of time wherever I can to go deep into cultures, to learn about different people, to learn about history, see what we've done wrong in the past, so hopefully we won't do it again, or recognise it when it pops up again, but also just to enjoy the beautiful way that so many other people live their lives. And it gives us a little bit more of an understanding of how we can live lives in balance, maybe how we can relate to other people. And without understanding people, we can't really know them and know how to deal with them. So in the void of that becomes ignorance. And I'm always surprised everywhere I go. I've been to 97 countries, and heaps of those countries I've been multiple times. I'm always surprised that my preconceptions, whether it be through the media or through whatever I'd seen or heard or read before, are always generally on the positive upside, and surprises me how amazing people are all over the world. The more we understand each other, the more we connect with each other, the more we help each other, the more chance we have for a peaceful and bright future. Thank you very much. God bless you all. Good luck with this festival, and good luck in your lives. Thank you.